Morning, everybody. We are 2 minutes to the hour. I think people are still joining. If we can give them like 2-3 more minutes, and then we start at 2 minutes past 9, that would be very helpful. Meanwhile, already start free to tell us who you are on the chats and where you're watching us from, and then I'll see you in 3 more minutes. Karibuni sana. Good morning once again. As promised, it's 2 minutes past the hour. Welcome very much, everybody, for joining us. It's a cold Friday morning, but I hope that we are all keeping warm. My name is Josephine Wawira. I'll be doing the introduction before I let the host, Wandera Koyo, to take over. Now, you're all here today because we want to understand how to navigate a toxic workplace, a topic that has elucidated a lot of conversations and as well as interest, and that is why we are having it today. Thank you for those who have joined our monthly conversations every last Friday of the month, and to the newcomers, asante sana and karibu to the Conversations with Wandi family. Now, the reason why you're here today is because, one, you want to understand what is a toxic workplace and what are the dynamics that we should be looking out for. What are some of the impacts that toxicity has on individuals as well as on organizations, and how do we cope and take care of ourselves. Also, in terms of when we have conflict among ourselves as employees or between employers and employees, how do we navigate and communicate about that? We will also be looking at resilience and personal growth. And at the end of it, I hope that time allows, as we always do, we are going to allow for Q&A. Now, I'm very happy because we have a very diverse team of panelists with a great experience, both on the HR and management perspectives. And of course, our very great host, Wandera Kweyu, whom I'm going to take to give this over to introduce the panelists and, of course, start the conversation. Feel free to introduce yourself on the chats. Also ask questions should you have any pressing ones along the way on the chats or on the Q&A box, and we're going to pick them as we go, or we shall address them at the end of the conversation. We are live streaming this on YouTube for your information, and we shall also be doing posts and updates on social media. So if you still know that there are people who have not joined and they would be interested in joining, feel free to still share the registration link, and hopefully they find us along the way. And as we always do, have fun and learn as much as possible. Wendy, over to you.
Thank you very much, Josephine, for the warm welcome, and welcome everybody that is joining us. I see we have quite a good, healthy number to begin with. My name is Wandera Kweyu, for everybody that has not met me before, and nobody actually called me that. People call me Wendy, so feel free to call me Wendy. I'm very excited to have you here today. And from wherever you are joining us, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this month's topic on how to navigate a toxic work environment. I am joined by a very splendid panel here today. I'll just let them introduce themselves quickly and say hi before we jump right into the conversation. With me, I have some people within the people and culture space, very senior leaders in the area, who would really like to hear the perspective that they bring to this conversation on the matters of toxicity within the workplace. So we'll start with you, Angela. Just a quick hello as we continue.
Hi, my name is Angela Centra. I am, can I say, a business leader with about 15 plus years work experience before I pivoted into HR.
Thank you very much, Angela. Terry.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Wendy. I'm Terry Chiundu. I'm a Senior Director of People and Culture at Village Enterprise. I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And also with me, I have an employee wellness specialist, Stephanie.
Hi, everyone, and good morning. I'm really delighted to be here. Thank you, Wendy. My name is Stephanie Wambui. I'm the Director of Employee Wellness and Assistant Programs at Nightwise, which basically just means that I design wellness interventions for employees. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Stephanie. And with me, I have a very senior business leader and conversationalist, Agatha.
Good morning. My name is Agatha Juma. I am a story curator, I'm a storyteller, and a public-private dialogue practitioner.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and Karibuni. And again, a warm welcome to all our participants. As usual, we are very excited to have you here. And the topic for this month is how we navigate a toxic workspace. And normally, when we work within any space, there is quite a number of things that happen, and there is quite a number of experiences that everybody has. For instance, each and every individual will experience a workspace significantly differently from the person right next to them. There is a person who will tell you that this is a terrible organization, and in the same breath, you would meet another person who would tell you this is a brilliant organization and I love working in it. And this is why it is important for us to sit and have a conversation and understand what exactly do we mean by a toxic workspace. Are you in one? Are you the one that's bringing in the toxicity? What do you do whether you're bringing in the toxicity or you are in a toxic workspace? And how are we able to just handle ourselves depending on how we are experiencing the organization? And I'd just like to say to our participants here, and especially all the business leaders, an organization is experienced differently by every person that is in it. And this is something that we need to be very cognizant of as we are running our businesses, as we are giving strategies to help us understand and be differentiated and successful in the market. So you have to, at least the bare minimum, take a minute to admit that each and every person in your organization is a human being in their own regard. They have their own feelings, their own perceptions of each and everything. And inclusion really does mean trying to create common ground as far and wide as possible for each and every person that is within the workspace. So I just wanted to begin this conversation by, putting, what is it called, removing the elephant from the room, or saying it very quickly. And I want to be the first person that would volunteer to say that I have been a toxic employee. I have been one that has actually created the toxicity in our workspace. And I want to be very honest when I tell you, when I was doing it, I really did not know that I was a toxic employee. I was at that point experiencing what I thought was a terrible workspace, and I was doing what I thought to be expression of the things that were causing toxicity in the workspace. Of course, at this point, my level of awareness was not as heavy as it's supposed to have been. So all I was doing was experiencing and communicating what I was experiencing. And I want everybody that is in this call to just wonder with me, if you have been in that space where you have said some of these things before we go into our panelists. And just, take a second, wonder with me. Have you ever been in this place where the best conversations you've had is constant criticism of the organization, of the leadership, of some of the interventions that they have? Have you been in this space where your empathy has been a bit questionable? You don't want to understand where your boss is coming from or where your other colleagues are coming from. Are you in always constant conflicts and you're just unable to resolve any of these conflicts that you're having? Have you been the gaslighter? Are you been the one, playing manipulation games behind the curtain? How about your sabotage? Have you tried to, and this one I find to be quite interesting, the ones who always get emails and then you say, noted, and then it's 3 weeks later and everything that was supposed to go right didn't go right, and you're that person who sits at the back and is like, I told you, I'm the only person that works in this space, yeah? And then another one that I also like is just the very unhealthy power dynamics, where you are trying as much as possible to be the CEO of a business where you're not the CEO. You're being that person that has completely refused to accept that you're led by somebody else. And you're just in this space where you're negative, you're angry, and consistently, you just keep spreading it. So for me, what I was doing was the simplicity of the fact that at every tea break, at every time that I would visit somebody in their office, I would just start with, did you see what that guy did last week? My God, this person. Now I'm just here wondering with everybody that has joined us, have you ever been in that space? Which then becomes a really interesting thing to talk about. And I just want to start posing this question to Angela and understand from your part, because toxicity is not something that we used to discuss a long time ago. It's something that started just recently. And before, it was either I have a bad boss or my organization just doesn't pay well. If you could just tell us, Angela, from your point of view, what is this issue about toxicity? Where did it come from and where are we now?
Thank you, Wendy. I really like the take that you've given first. As the former toxic employee, I think most of us like to assume that toxicity is somebody else's problem. It's the boss causing it. It's the organization. It's my colleagues. And possibly no one is looking at the mirrors. In what ways am I contributing? I can give an example. Have you ever been in a meeting after the meeting? You had a meeting where all of us agreed to something. But then we all come out of the meeting and then we have another meeting after that meeting where we completely disagree with the decision. Those are signs of toxicity. Or where you have the WhatsApp group that does not have everyone, where we actually discuss. So we discuss the decisions outside of the meeting. So I think for me, the first sign of a toxic work environment is a place where people cannot be themselves. They do not bring their whole selves to work. And then secondly, they are afraid to dissent. You're afraid to share your opinion and share your views and just say, maybe I disagree with this direction. And you share that openly. So there's no open communication. We are having side chats. There's consistent back chat. There's niches in the organization. There's gossip. There's backbiting. There's credit being taken. So if you're in any one of those situations, you're possibly an actor, sometimes innocent, sometimes not so innocent, and sometimes you're the perpetrator. So I think for me, those are some examples of a toxic workplace, and I'll hand over to the other panelists to hear from their experience.
And just before I pass this to the other panelists, let me just pose this to you, Agatha. When Angela says toxic workspace, what is it that we used to perceive this to be before the word toxicity caught on? What were we looking at this as?
So before, well, a decade or so ago, when the word toxic workplace had not reached here, I don't know if it was elsewhere, we just had nasty people. And you knew in an organization, it was consistent. Hey, Agatha has issues, or Agatha is going through something and she's bringing it to work. And that would be consistent in my whole life. If you talked to my friends, they would say, Agatha is off. Or then Agatha had a mental illness because she was just generally nasty, unpleasant, unhappy. So this new thing of the whole workplace is toxic. A whole building is toxic, is new, because it then removes responsibility from a few individuals and paints an entire organization as unpleasant, which is off. Yeah, paints a broad brush. The good and the bad and the ugly are all painted with one brush.
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody has ever experienced this, where you have that one leader that is toxic. It's just one person in an organization that is toxic. And because everybody is so afraid to say it, we just simply say that the whole organization is toxic. So I don't know, what are your thoughts, Terry, on what are the actual signs, as Angela has said, that would paint the whole organization as toxic? And remember, this is a very significantly different point from what Agatha is putting when she says there could be the possibility that there are just some people in the organization that are toxic. What are some of those areas that you can start to say as red flags, that this is not just a few people, the majority of the people in this space are indeed toxic?
Thank you. I think you will see that quite a bit when there's within an organization, there's cutthroat competition. Like there's no space for collaboration. People are fighting to be noticed by the boss. They are lying against each other, taking credit for work they haven't done. Like you will see that a lot in bosses, where somebody has burnt the midnight oil, done all the work, then the boss takes the credit for it. And you see these across different departments. And yes, as Agatha puts it, it's a time when a whole organization is labeled, toxic, because mostly of the leaders. I would say it really is the leaders that would make the culture toxic or not toxic. Yes, you will find a few employees, like you said, your example, but quite a bit it's the leaders that fuel that. They don't give room for feedback. There's no opportunity to voice your opinion, or to point out a mistake, or give feedback where necessary. You're there to be seen and not to be heard, is the culture within that organization. Yeah, Thank you.
And thank you very much, Cherry, Angela, and Agatha, for sharing these views on the differences within the workspace in terms of the dynamics that bring either toxicity and the origins of these spaces. Because sometimes you've noticed very clearly the toxic person could just be one person within the organization, or it is possible that the organization, to a large extent, would have elements of toxicity all through it. I just want to pose it here with every person that is listening to us today. When was the last time you took leave, especially when you're a leader? When is the last time you took leave? And I really mean when you took leave, not when you went out of the office and every hour you kept calling to check exactly what it is that you asked to be done and whether it is being done according to your own standards, so that somebody could be experiencing just what Terry has said from you. They are simply there to be heard, to be seen. So you find that people are not even able to send emails without copying you. Here I keep saying, if you're the CEO of a building and you have been copied in the email about the fact that we need to increase the quantity of tea and sugar in the kitchen, I'm just saying, it's probably not me. It's probably just a question I want to put out there. It's why are you in copy of that email? And you need to be able to start introspecting and asking yourself, what is that doing to you? And this is the question that then I would want to pose to you, Stephanie. What are the potential consequences of such kind of toxic dynamics on an employee's well-being, mentally, physically, and in terms of even how they deliver within the workspace?
Thank you, Wendy. And I really love what has been said about toxicity, that it is primarily an experience. And so when we say that it is an experience, that means that it will definitely have different faces in different people, or different faces even at different levels of the organization. And at an employee standpoint, when our brains actually interpret any form of threat as very serious. So our brains don't know how to categorize threat the way you'd say, oh, that's a lion, it's going to eat me, or that is a cyber threat, maybe it's not immediate, or this is a dangerous situation I am in, so I need to take care. Our brains are actually just interpret stress, trouble, threat in the same way. So our bodies normally respond in a very specific way. That is by releasing the stress hormone that is called cortisol. And that's where the problem with toxic workplaces comes. Because once you have been overproducing cortisol for a while, we start seeing a decline in your physical health. First of all, you'll begin to experience immense weight gain, which, by the way, happens to be a part of some organizations try to help their employees as well to lose weight or to manage their weight. So you see an immense weight gain. Number two, what happens when your body is not feeling good? Your mind starts capturing that feeling as well. So we start experiencing some mental health related anxieties, could also have disorders. So whether we're talking about you experiencing chronic anxiety, where you are socially anxious from the minute you enter work, from the minute you're interacting with your colleagues, you constantly experience surges of anxiety, to also the point of where you feel like you're helpless, so even to a state of depression. And then what does that do to your work? You decline in your productivity. You stop communicating or engaging more with your colleagues. Why? I'm protecting my views. I don't want to be naked. I don't want to be vulnerable with colleagues, people I do not trust. So there's a lack of trust that happens there. And even more to that, I become resistant to change. The unfortunate thing about the impact of toxic workplaces is that at an employee level, is that you tend to adopt a victim mentality. And so as a result, even for an employer to bring in change, or even for an outsider to bring in change, it becomes very difficult. Why? You do not trust any source of help that is coming to you. You're not certain that that help is going to work. So people turn out to be incredibly resistant to change. Obviously, this does also contribute to them becoming a toxic employee, and contributing to them being contributing to the overall toxic environment. So it will have an impact on your physical health. You will end up experiencing lifestyle-related illnesses or disorders or struggles. Then it will have an impact on your mental health. Your thinking is now skewed. So as a result, you can experience a lot of anxieties, a lot of feelings. And then you'll also go for validation of those feelings and experiences. And then last but not least, it will have a big impact on your work. Lower engagement, lower productivity, a lack of communication, a lack of trust, a distrust, a resistance to change, and even up to the point of becoming a toxic employee as well.
I love what you have just said, and you see, it leads us to this space where we start saying, and if you had joined us earlier, I was talking about me, Wendy, when I was toxic, when the toxic behavior was being exemplified from myself. And one of the things that I have said is I used to really enjoy the gaslighting. And more often than not, we tend to think gaslighting can only be done to the particular individual that is holding a conversation. Sometimes you can gaslight people that had nothing to do with your conversation so that they can join in your bandwagon of anger. And this is one of the things that is very common within the toxic workplace. And I keep saying, toxicity can begin from me one day. But if I'm very good at recruitment, I can be able to recruit the whole organization rather than just one day being toxic. And this is where I just want to come back to you, Angela, and Agatha, and hear your side of this, your take of this type of conversation. Is it necessarily true that it is the organization that is actually toxic in totality, or is it possible that it is just a few employees in general?
Okay, so as a non-HR practitioner, I am not bound by the language that is used by my esteemed panelists and you, Wendy. An organization is people. So when we say an entire organization is toxic, you then wonder, does that include the furniture? Does that include the work that you do? It is people. And for me, as a storyteller and a story curator, this is where stories are important, because we assume that people come into a workspace or workplace as blank canvases. When I was working at IFC, we sat and had a conversation and were wondering, especially female bosses, the ones who had risen to the level of directors were, to put it politely, just nasty people, nasty and pleasant people. And in a conversation with someone who had been in the organization longer, they painted a picture of these women, especially Black women, who had risen to the top. They had clawed their way up. And what we now call toxic would have been a walk in the park for them. I mean, they beat all the odds possible. They were the brightest of the brightest, working in organizations that had people who did not accept women, or who did not accept Black people, Black men and women. And for them to rise, for the Martha Karuas to rise, for the Wangari Maathais to rise, toxic is what lives in them because that's all they experience. And hence, when they come into a workspace, they have not been led in any other way. They do not know better. And to date, it still is really hard for people of certain ethnic minorities or from certain schools. If you came from the village, you are district focused, to rise to the top. So in that clawing to the top, by the time you get into a workplace, you know no other way other than fighting. And I'm seeing in the chats, people are talking about its leaders who enable toxicity. I don't think anyone wakes up in the morning saying, today I am going to my company to just be the most toxic person there is. How about we start looking at first ourselves, because you can only change yourself, and ask, how do I show up? But also, what informs how I show up? There's someone who said in the chat that there are bosses who only give feedback when it's negative. Maybe they've never, from their childhood, experienced it any other way, and it's worked for them. So I agree with you, and it's a lot of introspection of, I can't just be the victim. And I think it's Angela or Stephanie, you said that we play victim, but who are we in this game, and what informs how we show up? Because we don't come into the workplace and then culture is poured all over us and we drink it and now we are ready for this organization.
And I like what you have just said. I've used this statement somewhere and in a very HR environment, and everybody looked at me and was like, what do you mean? Culture is not how you've painted your walls, this culture book that you have written, this thing that is in your mission, your vision, and this thing that is normally, of late we're starting to push it on the signature of our emails and on our LinkedIn pages, etc. Culture is what people do. It's what people do. And every day we try as much as possible to make sure that we are doing the same thing. And this is what kind of sort of complicates the issue of culture. Because when we forget that I bring in my own culture into a space, the other person brings in their own culture into a space. And the ideal of these different cultures that are in this space is to create one common understanding through which all of us can be agreeable to do things in that type of way, direction, or with that kind of desired effect. Which brings us to this question where we understand that everybody is an actor into this. You're either contributing, you're either willfully letting it pass, or you're actually the one who is highly irritated by what's going on and you are feeling all the pressure that's going on, that's of the happenings within you in the within your workspace. And this is why I want to just go back to you, Angela, and say, how can employees then recognize toxic behaviors? And when I mean employees, I want us to include ourselves in that definition, because sometimes when we say employees, you think we mean other people. We also mean yourself, because you are in that space too. So how then do you recognize these toxic behaviors in the workspace? Yes, Angela.
Okay, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think there's one thing that Agatha has said about, just painting with a broad brush. Is the building, is the furniture, is when you just walk in, is that what is toxic? No, it's a set of behaviors that are very common, by the way. And I'll pick up on something that Stephanie said. First, victims, number one. And victims in the sense that nothing is ever their fault. Those kinds of behaviors where it's always somebody else's fault. Blame game. And the most insidious one I think I found is gossip. I mean, we talk a lot about toxic workplaces, but at the core of so many toxic workplaces that festers is just gossip in the workplace. You don't want to get too much into it, but anytime that there's all of that, at the heart of it, there are other signifiers such as just disrespect, where people, there's a certain level of disrespect, insincerity, downright, people are just dishonest in the workplace, that secretive behavior, or just a lack of collaborative work, backstabbing, or like if you think of the examples of where we have those very senior people who have clawed their way to the top, and then it is us who want to be like them. If we are constant posturing to them and just trying to be too liked, over talking, undermining others in group settings, and we're basically trying to paint ourselves in a certain way just so that we can get in or get to the top. Those sort of behaviors, I think, for me, are some of the signs that you find in a workplace that are toxic. And I think there's one common one that most people sometimes also just may disregard, which is dishonesty. And it can manifest itself in your work, where you take credit for someone else's work, or you take advantage of a coworker's help, or you just delegate all of your work. There are some people who literally 100% delegate their entire work, and then they take credit for that. All those things, employee entitlement, where you just feel like, policies do not apply to me, they apply to others. I have this right to be treated in a certain way that doesn't apply to everybody else. Those sort of things, they're small behaviors, but they are the ones that then begin to contribute into what it be a toxic workplace. And I think maybe another one is also just refusing to get input and feedback from others, where basically you have all of the answers, you're right all the time. And even if you are receiving feedback from multiple sources, you completely disregard it, because then you know it all and you're right about everything. Those sort of behaviors, when you start to see them manifesting, then you realize that either yourself are a toxic employee, if you're constantly not taking feedback, you're gossiping, you're dishonest, or you're seeing it manifesting in others, then you realize those are toxic behaviors.
And that's very well put, Angela, because it's quite an array of negative behaviors that we either are the perpetrators or it's being perpetrated upon us, or we are silently watching as it's happening to other people. I like the comment that somebody has put here, and I'm just going to read it out because that's so apt, where they have said toxicity is something like a play or something where we have the screenwriters, the producers, etc. And then I just want to say, actually, this is exactly what happens in any given workspace. Everybody has their own role that they play within a toxic workspace. And it is very important for us to introspect. And again, you'll notice a lot of this conversation today is about introspection. To introspect and ask yourself, what role are you playing in nurturing the toxicity of this workspace? Which would then lead me to my next question to you, Terry and Wanda. If you're able to identify all of these things, how do you protect yourself from this toxicity? And it would be good after that if, Stephanie, you can also just chime in and let us know, other than protecting yourself, what are some of the things that you as an individual can be able to do to make sure then that you transition either the organization from a toxic space or yourself from a toxic space? Yes, Terry.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. I'm really enjoying this conversation. When you talk about how do we protect ourselves, as Angela brought out, it's really an array of things that bring out the toxicity. But one, as a leader, I realized I have this habit of sending emails at midnight, at odd hours. And obviously, when somebody sees that, they would feel the need to respond, even though I'm not asking for a response at that time. And so for one, as a leader, it's just recognizing the things that, as a leader, make me toxic, to the rest of the team, like not going on leave, asking for things, giving very short timelines for work, which causes stress in the team. And so we have to recognize as leaders, because it has been said over and over, even in the chat, that it's really bosses and leaders that fuel this toxicity. Yes, we have toxic employees, but also as leaders, we don't provide the avenue that brings a safe space in the workplace. So we'll find even unknowingly, we are actually bringing that stress to the team. We are the ones causing the toxicity. And so just avoiding those emails, once you recognize that I'm actually bringing stress, causing stress on my team, that they have to wake up so early just to respond to an email because I sent it at midnight, then I have to stop the habit and change that so that I am sending emails during work hours and giving proper timelines and feedback as necessary to the team, and not really the one creating that atmosphere that is unfriendly to the team. Thank you.
Yes, Stephanie.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you, Terry, for laying the foundation on safeguarding, because that's really what it is. And there's safeguarding at an organizational level. So Wendy's question for me is at an individual level. The first things first is what we have done today, becoming educated, okay? Every single person who has signed up to come for this conversation or to come for this talk is in the right direction. That's the first step. You do need to understand what a toxic workplace is. You do need to get different perspectives from industry leaders, and because that is what will give you a balanced view. Also the challenge with listening to one source of information, it makes it very difficult for you to have a balanced perspective about a situation. So the fact that Wendy has brought together 4, 5, 6 various industry experts to talk about the issue, and they're all representing different aspects, championing different aspects of the issue, is very good for you because you get to see it from a balanced view. Number 2 is documentation, okay? Now, this is what I mean by documentation. I know now our HR people are getting, the heart is palpitating. But this is what I mean when I talk about documentation. Just like we said when we started, that toxicity is an experience. It's very, very broad for you to come and say, by the way, this office is toxic. So what does that mean? Just as Agatha was saying, does that mean that the company itself is toxic, the name is toxic, the day is toxic, the chair is toxic? What exactly is toxic? If you are educated, it means that you will have learned the signs of toxicity. So that is the microaggressions, that's the discrimination, that's the bullying and harassment, that's the distrust or dishonesty, where an instance where a manager has taken credit for your work. Like, it's very, very specific, okay? You have to be very objective and try to see, if I was going to see where this situation is at, then where would I categorize and say this situation was extremely toxic? Why? This helps you to be able to confront the toxicity. One of the reasons why we gossip a lot in toxic environments is simply because we want validation. And you want validation because you're not doing documentation, okay? When you want validation, it's because you're saying, ama wa unaonaje, mi naona hivi, wa unaonaje, what do you think? I mean, did you feel the way he was talking? The vibe was not good. So do you see, when you're trying to document, what is a vibe? It helps you. It helps you to better articulate what exactly is the toxic behavior, and then now from there you're able to now know who to confront. So it's HR is meant to be the safe space where you should be able to address this. If it's coming from your manager, it's also, manager has taken credit for your work. It's really important for you to communicate and say that this is how you interpreted that situation. I felt that I was the one who did this assignment. I didn't get any credit for it. I want to understand what your perspective or what your reasoning for how you did this was, so that we can make sure this doesn't happen again in future. If it's a fellow colleague who is also creating a toxic environment, it's a similar thing. You see, you're not coming and telling them, I think you're a very toxic person. What should I change now that I'm toxic? Let me be toxic then. But if you can tell me, you don't, I'm not able to, I don't appreciate maybe how this went down. Do you think in future we can work around us being able to do this better? It's a much better win for you, because anytime you let go of the rails, who's going to sort it out for you? No one is going to sort it out for you, because you're not communicating the situation yourself. So at an individual level, how you can safeguard is by doing those things: being educated, documenting the issues that you're experiencing, and then being actively in charge of your own well-being. So that whether that be your mental well-being, your physical well-being, etc., that means actively in charge. It's not a secondary thing. You're not waiting for somebody else to tell you to take care of yourself. You are the one who is proactive with taking care of yourself.
And thank you very much, Stephanie and Terry, for putting it as bluntly as you have. And the one thing that we need to consistently remember, culture is made of people. We are the ones that bring it alive. An organization becomes alive when the people have come into it. And I want to really put to you, my audiences today, is to also focus on your own healing, especially when you're the one that is perpetrating the toxicity. One of the things that I learned in my time as being a very toxic employee was when the movement was happening from me, from that organization that, trust me, at this point, I had considered it is the organization that was toxic. I'm not necessarily sure if it was the chairs, the walls, the windows, but it was just everything was toxic. And, sometimes I remember a friend of mine once told me there's this movie. It was quite a funny movie way back when. It was called, I think, White Chicks, where there's this lady who had a broken finger, and she kept pressing on different things, and she kept saying, everything is hurting my finger, and it's not your finger is the one that was broken. And it doesn't matter what you're going to touch, it's going to hurt. And this is the same thing with carrying toxicity from one space into another. When you sit back and introspect, again, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, this conversation will be a lot about introspection. When you sit and introspect and ask yourself, how am I going to leave behind some of these behaviors that I was having that are toxic as I am moving forward to another workspace. And I would also just want to hear from you, Agatha, again, when we come from this very individual perspective of this is me that is toxic, or this is me looking to move from a toxic spaces. Are there any proactive measures that we can put as individuals, either during the process of job search, to be able to help us to identify whether we are the ones that are toxic, or identify if we are moving into an environment that would end up being toxic for us?
Thank you, Wendy. I'd seen a message from Angela. She wanted to pick up on a point Stephanie had made. Could she do that before I make my point?
Thanks, Agatha. I think one of the points that Stephanie made about you recognizing yourself. So what if you yourself are actually the toxic boss? How do you know? Because, you don't wake up and then somebody comes to your face. And there's a set of things that you should really actually look at. And I myself found on my own teams and in the instances where I recognize that perhaps I was a poor leader, is especially when people are not producing on your team and you don't know why they're not producing, or you have factions on your team, there's infighting in your team, or people are producing but they are overworked, they're burnt out. You can't find out anything unless you investigate, because people are withholding the truth from you. So they're not honest with you because they are afraid of you. So if you begin to see those things, then you realize that the experience you're creating for your team is not a healthy one. And it could be because of a set of things that we as leaders sometimes do. So first, micromanaging. When you're micromanaging your team because you don't trust your reports, you don't trust the work they're doing. If you have competent employees in place and you hire them for a reason, let them do their work and give them the space to grow. If you're poor at delegating, again, you take on all the work because you're demonstrating that you don't trust the employees themselves. You're burnt out as a leader. And when you're burnt out as a leader, you end up burning out your colleagues as well and the people that report into you. And one more is you just do not communicate priorities clearly. One of the biggest contributors of burnout is just a lack of clarity, because you don't know what you're working on. Your team doesn't have clear responsibilities, prioritized. You can't even clarify for them what are their top priorities. So those sorts of things, you're either underestimating your impact on your team as a leader, or you're overestimating it by, saying, I can do all of these things by myself. I'm the best at it. No one can do a better job than me. Or if you want a job done, you do it well. If you want a job done well, you do it yourself. That kind of mentality. And then just the lack of recognition. You clearly just do not celebrate the people on your team and what they're doing. Those are ways in which that you as a leader can contribute to toxicity on your team.
Thank you very much, Angela.
Sorry, go ahead, Wendy.
No, I was just going to call upon you.
Okay. For me, there's two things which you mentioned in your introduction, Wendy. One is self-awareness. It is so easy, so automatic. And I'm seeing it on the chats as well. We are pointing fingers at those bosses, at those leaders who do things. Imagine leaders are just you in a few years. So if you're unaware now, you will be even more unaware with the pressure of delivery. So leaders they're not a different species. They don't come with extra grace. In fact, they come with less grace. And if you've sat at C-suite level, it's a hard space to be in. It's a really, really hard space to be in. So all of us in this Zoom room and on YouTube, we start being leaders now. We start creating that awareness of how we show up now. And as opposed to pointing to bad leaders, we then learn from them. I once had a boss in a small company, and that woman, she poured out, like toxicity acid, like this, and we drank it. She was such an unpleasant boss to some people, and then she had her favorites. But because there's no human who's 100% off, like a really bad person, 100%, there's good and bad in all of us. How she treated her customers should be a case study. Her customers thought the world of her. And if you messed up her customer, you're going to have ulcers your ulcers were going to be burning up for the whole month. So you learn from them. So these leaders that you guys are saying are bad, learn from them. There's something they're doing well to have gotten there. Number two, nobody teaches leadership. In fact, all these executive programs at Strathmore Business School and whoever are taught to people who've already risen at managerial level. A really good accountant or a really good HR officer is then made the head of people and culture, or chief finance officer, or CEO. They just were really good at doing books. Nobody taught them how to deal with people. So empathy, empathizing with the entire human race, that we are all struggling with something. And then introspection, as Wendy keeps saying, and taking personal responsibility. For me, I have 3 mindsets that guide my life. Number 1 is beginner's mindset. There's always an opportunity to suck at, can I use the word suck? Okay, I already have.
Absolutely.
At something new. Begin to learn. In a workspace, you're given a new task. And my default as Agatha is usually to say no. No, I don't want new roles, I don't want, but give yourself the opportunity to begin. Number 2, growth mindset. We only know what we know and we don't know how much we know. So you're constantly growing as we become those leaders who will be non-toxic. And then owner's mindset. The only person I can change is me, and I have 100% agency of my life. So while it's easy to point fingers, I go home with me. I live with me. And the people around me, even in my house, even if I consider them toxic, it is my life. It is me. So how do I have this agency over my life? And again, I will go back because I'm a storyteller and a story curator. What are the stories you have told yourself about you, about what kind of people bosses and managers are, what kind of people thrive? And one last point, Wendy, if you are really that good and you're not being treated well, why are you there? Hii kampuni sio ya mama yako, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So get undeniably good at what took you there, using the resources that you have in that workplace so that you can live.
Oh, thank you very much.
Non-toxic place.
Thank you very much, Agatha, for saying that, which brings me to a space where I just want to borrow from one thing that you have said. What stories are you telling yourself? Also, what stories are you telling others? Or what stories are others telling you you're buying on the issue of toxicity? Again, I have just said here that toxicity is experienced differently from different people. And it's not just toxicity that is experienced. An organization is experienced differently with different people. Depending on which side of the divide you're on, you're highly likely to experience the organization very differently. You would find some of these organizations that have won the Employer of the Year awards, and it has very high engagement levels. It's never 100. There is always that 6%. There's always that 3% that really does not like it. One of the things that I learned in my own journey from transforming from that very toxic employee into a person that is more open-minded was when you join an organization, and this is a trick I want everybody to just keep in mind, listen to who is making friends with you first, and make a choice how you want to experience this organization. If you have just joined, and me, your neighbor Wendy, has told you the way you have made the worst mistake that you will ever make when you are joining this organization, this is a moment of choice for you. Because you are either going to listen to Wendy and agree with Wendy and go into Wendy's path, or you're going to listen to Wendy and make a choice to experience the organization as yourself and make your own decision and create your own path. So at least at the bare minimum, do not be that person that is experiencing toxicity on behalf of Wendy. If you're going to experience toxicity, at the bare minimum, experience it for your own self. And when we are there, I keep wondering, and this is a question that I want to put towards you, Terry, how then can employees develop resilience and coping mechanisms other than the ones we have talked about when they are actively trying to seek change? This is where the question, what Agatha has just said, you can be very good at what it is you're doing, but still it's there. What resilience mechanisms can you put? What coping mechanisms can you put for yourself as you're actively seeking change, whether it is change within the organization or change outside of the organization?
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Agatha and Angela, for the things you've highlighted. One, I would like to say we are really the result or sum total of our background, our experiences, and the people that we hang out with, the books that we read. And so just riding on to what Agatha has said about a growth mindset, it's so important when you come into a workplace, you need to have at least personal goals. What's your intention? What are your personal goals as an individual now that you have joined that workplace? A few months ago, I was talking to a colleague of mine, and she was experiencing some things, and she mentioned to me that I definitely wouldn't want to leave this organization because I have a goal in mind. This is not the time yet, you see. So because that is not the time yet, she would now look at ways, how do I navigate this situation? And so building that, when you talk about resilience, is now how do I navigate my relationship with my boss, my relationship with my colleagues? And having a growth mindset is really, one, about learning. You know, example of what we are learning here, the things that we are learning, looking at how do I handle these relationships in a better way. First of all, introspect, self-awareness. Am I aware of the things that I'm bringing? And then now this is the way the workplace is. How do I deal with my colleagues and my boss? Do I deliver on time? Yes. How can I approach my boss? Do I need to book meetings, one-on-ones, just to talk to them about what I'm experiencing? And really developing that being an open book, and not necessarily just saying everything, but having a point where you give feedback as an employee, that you're constantly giving feedback to your leader who is supervising you, letting them know what you're experiencing, letting them know what kind of help or support that you need. Because sometimes we are afraid to ask for help in the workplace. We think we will be considered weak, and that we are not qualified for our jobs because we asked for help. Really, it's important to ask for help when you need it. And then besides asking for help, also be an employee who can be trusted with other people's conversations and who does not encourage gossip. When somebody brings gossip to you, just say no. You know, really have the power to say no. And I always say no is a full sentence. You don't have to participate in that gossip. No is a full sentence. You can say no and not participate. If you can bring out the issue, ask the colleague to bring out the issue in a meeting if they need to, or talk it out and support them on how to go about it, but don't be part of the gossip club in the workplace. So really important to have a growth mindset. What is my goal in this organization? And what's my focus? And focus on that, focus on delivering, focus on bringing the best. And as Agatha said, it's not the furniture. It's not the stools and the chairs and the tables. It's the people. And so I can be that one good apple in the organization that brings the right atmosphere and the right perspective to work. Thank you.
Amazing. No is a full sentence. I keep telling my team every time when somebody comes to tell me something, and I'm very notorious for this. I keep saying, as I have been growing in leadership, one of the things that has made me very discerning is to ask myself this question when somebody is telling me stories. Why are you so comfortable to talk to me about this person like that? What exactly am I doing that is making you think that coming to say these things about other people, or even coming to tell me what other people have said about me? My bigger question is, why are you so comfortable with me like that? Or why is somebody so comfortable to talk to you about that other person the way they are talking to them about? There is obviously a point of convergence that normally occurs before such conversations are had. And this is the point where Perry's statement can come into full effect. No, and it's a full statement. And sometimes it can help you inform yourself of what is actually going on with the different people that you are talking to and understand them from where they are coming from. You know, sometimes people tell you things not because they want answers and responses from you. Sometimes some people just want to breathe. And you know, the best favor you can do in an organization or in an environment that is considered to be high in toxicity is to end it with yourself. End the anger, the bitterness with yourself, and instead go and put in practices or give this person meaningful solutions as to how they can be able to help themselves feel much better. And before we go into the safety of people within the workspace, I just want to ask you, Stephanie, especially when it comes to prolonged exposure to this negativity or toxicity within the workspace, what does this prolonged exposure have on you as an individual and maybe even on your career?
That's a very excellent question, Wendy. You know, I really like the conversation as it is. Let me first say, you know, our culturally today, as where we are at, there's a glorification of gossip. We now call gossip tea. So it's so hard when we're saying say no, you say no to tea. And because of the culture that has been promoting just sharing of that information, I know that will be quite a challenge. But I'll go back to what I did say before, and when I was just talking about victims and the victim mentality. And that particularly is the fact that the primary reason why people gossip in the workplace is to get validation, okay? So you're not just saying it because it's funny, it's fun to say, or you're malicious. I mean, that could be part of it. However, primary reasons are that you want to rally people to agree with your perspective so that your perspective carries weight and you get like some more confidence to be able to address this issue, whether you're addressing it in a good way or whether you are addressing it in a wrong way. And so it's quite a shame. However, what I do stand for very firmly, and this is what we do try to do with our company on a day-to-day, is to help employees to be able to build that resilience for themselves, as Terry was saying. So many of the times that one of the greatest pegs for your resilience is your well-being. So I get that we can be extremely goal-oriented, okay? We can be like focused. I know what I want to achieve in the year 2023, and I know why I want to be in this company, and my projection is a 5, 3-year, 10-year goal, and I have this plan, and ABCD is going to go like that, or this is what I'm going to keep my eye on. If you are not addressing well-being, even from an organizational standpoint, there is something amiss, whether the organization is toxic or not. Why? Every single person needs help to grow. So sometimes we experience things that are uncomfortable in an organization, and then we think that they are toxic. Where do you come to do introspection or self-introspection that would actually be productive for you is in the form of, for example, therapy, okay? Mental well-being. When employees have access to services where they can talk to professionals. You know, something so funny about therapy is that you come in angry at someone else, you leave enlightened about yourself. Because you're not taught about how to change people. You're taught about how to affect, impact, influence what you are capable to affect, change, and influence. So it is that simple. Yes, your boss is a uncomfortable. He was very harsh, and that came across as toxic. The entire issue of generations as well within the organization, the conflict because of communication styles, leadership styles, expectations, a lack of mentorship, as Agatha had mentioned before, and we're passing down traumas. So now coming down to Wendy's question, we're now, this word that we call trauma, what exactly is trauma? Trauma is just that you have negatively been impacted by a very unexpected experience that is in a negative way, okay? And that is something that you can carry with you continuously. And trauma is not to say that you will never be traumatized even in the workplace. It is there, and it will be there. But that is a part of growth, like we're saying, especially when it comes to the workplace, where you are being challenged to come out of your comfort zone. So for us, it's to mainly, for me particularly, is to mainly advocate that there should be a safeguarding of well-being at an organizational level. Are we catering to the well-being needs of our employees? Why? This will be the pillar of their resilience. You can say, go do resilience training, like is it Agatha who was mentioning that there's leadership courses? Go do a leadership course, go do this course. But if we're not actively providing those channels for them to be able to access those services, then it will be very, very difficult for them to walk through their trauma, okay? Because now, imagine in the case of therapy where a CEO is coming and they're saying, my employees today really disappointed me, especially this particular employee. I see so much potential in them, but day in, day out, they don't realize their potential, and it's frustrating me, okay? Then now the question becomes, why are you bothered? Okay, could you possibly be projecting your own expectations? Are you living vicariously through this employee? Do you have stuff that you have not communicated articulately with them? And is this even an appropriate relationship or experience that you're having? And so as a result, somebody is able to process through that. What happens tomorrow? They are a better leader. If they are running, you talked about the long exposure of trauma. So let's talk about your physical body. What happens when you experience a toxic workplace is that, like I had mentioned, you release a lot of cortisol. Cortisol is the stress hormone, okay? So basically when you're stressed, it's because there are hormones in your body that have told your body, I am so stressed out. So you need to come up. It releases adrenaline, so it keeps you on a constant alert. I'm ready to fight at any point or to fly at any point. So what does that happen when you are constantly, from age to 5, you're constantly experiencing high cortisol levels? Your physical health is at doom. What are you doing about your physical health? Do you know that running and walking and cardio are more for your mental health than they are for your physical health? Your physical health in the workplace looks like you drinking water. Are you drinking water? Just something as simple as that. The way I think there's now a Kenyan motto, hydrate, 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 which is good. Hydrating. Are you hydrating in the workplace? Are you going out for lunch, or are you eating lunch at your desk? Physical well-being is actually so much more broader than what it is we have thought it to be. It's beyond you going for a medical checkup. It's now you adopting habits on a day-to-day basis that can actually be able to impact that. Then for your organizational well-being, it's just those simple things that we had mentioned before. I think everybody has been able to touch a bit about that.
Mm-hmm. And I just love what you've said, especially when you've said therapy. You come in angry at somebody else and you leave when you're more informed about yourself. I'm a person that is an advocate for therapy. I go for therapy a lot. And I remember there was a time, the people that know me well, I used to say, I have fired more therapists than I have fired anybody else in my whole life. And I am in HR. So there is a lot of processing that sometimes happens. And one of the reasons I would be very quick to fire one of them would be simply because they told me a truth that I'm uncomfortable with. And this brings you to a space where, again, introspection becomes a really big issue. And even like Stephanie is saying, when stress levels are so high, there are sometimes when even things that are ordinary, you end up responding to them very, very differently. Like I saw a meme that was going on and I had a really good laugh where somebody had said, please help me, please my mind, help me to know that my flight or fight response is not supposed to be in response to an email. I can just respond to an email. So I read that and I was thinking, if you are in long exposed spaces for toxicity, sometimes this becomes an actual fact for you. When you see that email that has come in from Wandi, you have started to think, this is war. And you haven't even looked at it, or you're like, I do not want to do anything. I don't want to be with this. And you keep wondering to yourself, what can I do? And like Stephanie has given us quite a number of things that you can be able to do individually. And now I just want to ask you, Angela, what are some of these things that can organization do to encourage open communication, create safe spaces for employees to report incidences, maybe of bullying, harassment, and other toxic behaviors without the fear of them feeling that they will be retaliated against?
I like that. I've just seen in one of the comments where they said, what if it's HR perpetuating the toxicity? I was going to say, you need to have an active and healthy HR to build this. But one of the things, like we've seen, toxicity obviously is enabled by leadership, and enabled by leadership when they do not take action on it. And taking action is, being very clear and specific about what does this organization reward? If the organization rewards the backstabbing, the clawing your way to the top, we always have this slogan, no assholes. But if it's the assholes who are always winning in the organization, then your organization is not going to get rid of it. So it really starts with, what does leadership reward and recognize as the behaviors that get you ahead? And secondly, I think also people have to separate being held accountable for performance versus toxicity, because there's also, if constantly your performance is poor and then you say, yeah, my boss is toxic, it's not necessarily true. It's you're being held accountable for your performance. So your organization has to be clear about what is excellence in the organization, not perfection. So, if they are constantly held to a too perfect standard, perfectionism, then obviously you will be creating the wrong kind of environment. So for me, it's two things: your leadership, what the leadership rewards, what are the behaviors they uphold, what are the values of the organization, and how are leaders also held to account for those, and how do we hold the people who are not living up to these values to account? What are the things we reward? Who is promoted in the organization? Who's fired in the organization? And what behaviors are they fired for? So if the people who are whistleblowing are the ones who we retaliate against and the ones we fire, then obviously we then perpetuate the culture of where people are not going to come forward, they're not going to speak up. So leaders have to be at the forefront of then being culture bearers and stating upfront and living these values upfront. And being very clear, authentic, and open about the performance standards to which they want the organization to uphold. So if you're in a high performance culture, I'm sorry, it might appear toxic to you, but a high performance culture will require you to perform, to produce results, and they will tell you the truth to your face. We might like you, Angela, but your results are shit. So that's not toxic. That's actually quite good for you and for your growth, because you need to realize you want to get better, you want to grow. You're a good person, but if your performance is poor, we will tell you your performance is poor. So those things have to be very clear in your organization in order to get rid of the toxicity. I think the other one that also is really good for organizations, ensuring that everyone has a voice, ensuring that you're hearing from diverse perspectives, just allow people to speak, allow people to share their opinions, but also be clear about who's the decision maker. We can all give our opinions, but someone has to make the decision. And once you begin to build trust in the organization, then people, they are free to dissent, but they also have to commit to the direction that we uphold. If we all give our opinions, at the end of the day, somebody makes the decision. If we disagree with it, we need to be comfortable enough to say, I disagree, but I commit. And I will go along with this decision and make sure that it succeeds. And that way, we move our attention away from the small things in the organization and we focus our attention on producing the results. And at the end of the day, what are the things that brought us to work in the first place?
And I really like what you have said, because in that response, we've been able to see some of the key differences between a challenging environment and that one that is toxic. Huh? So don't hide behind "I'm not delivering." Don't hide behind that boss that is saying you must deliver, and go in the spaces of saying, you know what, this is a very toxic person. And I just want to push it back again to you, Terry, if you could be able to just let us know if there are any example you can give us of some initiatives that an organization has taken to transform a space that is considered toxic into a more healthy one.
I would maybe just to add on what Angela has said, it's important as an organization to provide a safe space for reporting. And that's one of the things we did in our own organization. Just part of implementing safeguarding was implementing whistleblowing and different ways or avenues that employees can report, whether it's an issue of abuse or harassment or anything going on in the workplace that's not acceptable within the limits of a workspace or work environment. So just providing that space and opportunities for employees to voice out concerns, whether confidentially or otherwise, and then also taking action. Because many times we have all these nice systems for reporting, but nothing is done about it. So people are reported, cases are brought forward to the boss. And we had such a situation in one workplace where a leader was reported for harassment, but later on, this leader was promoted. So you see, it sends a wrong message already in the organization that the organization promotes harassment of staff. So it's so important that once a workplace, an organization has put systems in place, let those systems work. Let there be people responsible to ensure that the systems are working, that those that are brought forward are actually taken through a disciplinary process and action is taken as appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you've just said something really key to make sure that as an organization, as a leadership of a business, you're able to understand that which you reward. Because when you reward something or when you push something forward, you're known for it. And this is how culture is created. Culture is not these things that we write. Culture is the things that we actually practice and we do. Which brings me to a question that I would want to pose to you, Agatha, where somebody has said, as a founder, sometimes it's difficult for you to let other people do things because, it's your baby, you're still holding on to it. And these are the things that you just really want to do. So how do you, as a founder, put yourself in this space where you're like, hey, okay, now I'm being toxic, or this is just me moving towards, this is me walking the journey of making sure my dream is realized the way I want it realized.
Yeah, I saw that question and it was spot on because I'm a founder. And people at leadership levels are founders of some sort of sense because you've been given responsibility which you own and you want to carry and you want to do the best that you can with it. I was fortunate a few years ago to sit and have conversation. There was a few of us with a gentleman called Benjamin Zander. He's the founder and the name escapes me, of Boston Philharmonic Orchestra. And he's been an orchestra director for many years, and he's done 1 or 2 TED Talks. And he talked about giving people an A, that whoever you meet, whoever you're working with, give them an A so that they're entering your space, work-related, here. And then it is the duty of this person to remain at an A. And then when they fall, they don't fall too far because you've already embraced them whole and their latent talent. So he says somebody will come, wants to play in the orchestra, play the piano, play whatever instrument, and it's at a very high level. They have some talent. They didn't come from playing kabaddi. but their talent is not at that level. But give them an A and they will work harder to meet that level. And then you as the leader, your work is to support them. Your work is to encourage them. And your work is also to call them out where they're failing. I think it was it Angela who was saying, in certain workplaces, we call you out on your bullshit. There's a friend of mine, unrelated, who once told me I was a CEO of an organization and there's things that I was expected to do, which I wasn't comfortable with. I'm like, I'm a private person. I don't want media. I said, by the way, Agatha, you should have gone and applied for a job as a receptionist in those downtown buildings. Nobody ever wants to interview them. Media is not interested in them. This is not about you. It's about the role you hold and the responsibilities that come with it. But give people an A, whether you're a founder or you're a leader, and then remember that what they have is latent talent. And when you give someone an A, they will fall maybe to a B+ or a B. But when everyone comes into your space with an E, you are suspicious, you don't trust them, this is my organization, this is my baby, this is my team, this is the highest someone will get up to is a C-. But you also then need to be living with an abundance mentality, which, forget what all those motivational speakers say, is not easy. To come into a space where you believe that you have a right to be here and that no one owes you anything, you don't know anyone anything, but you opt and choose to give out because you have it in abundance. It takes years of work, but it makes a whole lot of difference when you're not looking at everyone and imagining they have knives that they want to stab you with. Yeah, that's how I look at it.
Oh, wow. And I really like just how you have put it, to the extent that I actually don't even want to add anything to it. And as we are getting to the space where we are closing, I'll just ask some quick questions to the panel, and then we can give our closing remarks. And I would just start with you, Angela, and just understand, depending on the exposure that you've had in different spaces, what are some of the warning signs that can be able, if you see as that job seeker, as that employee, what are some of those warning signs that can be able to make you know that this company is actually taking time to change its workspace, so they're just giving you lip service? Because, the moment you know that these people are actively trying to change, it becomes a good space for you to then move forward. And I would also highly prefer if, Terry, then you could come in and just be able to tell us, for instance, how then we can work to create policy within the organization that can prevent this some kinds of toxicities within the workplace and the dynamics that follow. And then if we can have Stephanie just let us know then how employees can support each other while navigating this situation without necessarily calling it tea, just supporting each other, because sometimes a good story is nice to be told here and there, but then how do we put it within the healthy boundaries? So can just go through those questions quickly, and then we make our closing remarks.
Okay. I think for the individual, one of the effects and impacts of being in a toxic work environment is that it really triggers your imposter syndrome. If you're constantly worrying about your performance, you're overworking, you're just wondering, if you're in a constant state of anxiety where you feel like you're not good enough, and this is consistently triggered in the work environment, then I think you need to assess your situation and say, am I in the right place? Should I continue investing my energy in feeling as though I'm not good enough? Or should I be thinking about my next career move? And in terms of assessing whether the organization is actually taking steps, one of the things that happens to us when we're in that space where it's toxic and we are then caught in a cycle of imposter syndrome where you think, well, I can't leave this job because it's the only one I got, or they made you feel as though you're not good enough for any other place. You have to reassess your loyalty to the organization. If you're overworking and you're not being promoted, you're not growing, your performance is not improving, and there's no change for you, there's even no career path for you in that organization, then you really need to be very clear about, okay, what do I want for myself? And start to think about if you want to change jobs, and stop feeling guilty about being loyal to an organization that is not loyal to you. I think anytime you're loyal to an organization, there should be some type of reciprocation, whether it's in the pay that you receive, whether it's in the recognition that you receive, whether it's the opportunities you're given. It's not always about money, but whether it's the opportunities you're given to do work that energizes you, that where you can be at your best, and your boss, you have mentors, you have sponsors in the organization, and they're constantly pushing you to be your best self. Then if that's not happening, then you have to reassess where you want to be. But also you have to have very clear boundaries. I think for a lot of us, sometimes we're not very clear about what are my boundaries, what am I willing to accept, what am I not willing to accept. And you have to maybe create some career statements for yourself. If for 2023 is that, it's important to have balance and joy in your life and in your work. You need to enjoy it. You need to enjoy what you're doing. And if you're not, you need to think about that. And also, your job is not more important than your mental and physical health. You have to find the ways in which you can take care of yourself so that your job is not everything, and your boss or your colleagues or the workspace is not ruling over your whole life. So that's what I would advise somebody.
Thank you, Angela. Yes, Terry.
And just to quickly add to that, if I am I'm looking for a job and want to get into an organization, sometimes you may get it from the fire to the frying pan, thinking that you're running away from a toxic environment. Then you get right into one worse than before. So one of the sites you can look out for is Glassdoor. Glassdoor is a site where different companies are on that site, and employees, current and former employees, provide information about that workplace. So that's one place I always look to when I'm going into an organization, just to see feedback from employees, feedback about that environment, whether it's benefits, the leaders, the type of workspace it is. It tells you a lot about different organizations. And then also look at the staff turnover in that organization. Just coming back to what kind of policies do we create to prevent toxicity in the workplace? One, for us as an organization, we have safeguarding policies, which include the code of conduct that really outlines what is acceptable behavior in the workplace, issues of respect, confidentiality, integrity, and all that. And then there's the aspect of harassment, anti-harassment, anti-bullying policies. We have those as well. And all these they're policies that would help within the workplace, but not forgetting the whistleblowing policy. Very important to provide an avenue for staff to report. And you can really get feedback from staff through either Net Promoter Score or staff engagement survey. When you do that, you collect feedback from staff, and that feedback can inform what you build on into the policy, so that it's not just policies that you're throwing out there to the people, but you have the input of the employees as well and the organization. In the organization. Thank you. Back to you, Wendy.
Wow. Thank you very much, Terry. Yes, Stephanie.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you, Terry, for what you've mentioned. I also want to add on before I answer and just throw another spanner into the work, which is also well-being policies. Again, because we're talking about toxic workplaces. So what we want to see is thriving workplaces. And that means that actually translates to the aspects of well-being. And well-being is 8 dimensions. Find out which aspects of well-being that your employees are prioritizing. Are they prioritizing? Most organizations will be physical health, mental health, and financial health. But there's also organizational well-being, social well-being, environmental well-being. There's so many other aspects of well-being that are there. And so it's important to as well ensure that you are working towards providing policies for that. How do you navigate employees who have disorders, mental illnesses? Do they get off days? An employee who wants to check into a wellness facility, how do you navigate that? Is that in your leave? Is that in your sick leave? Or is that different? An employee who's also able to, just from the various challenges that we have on a day-to-day basis, and also about them proactively taking up their well-being, whether it's also financial literacy, are they making investments, etc., because money is also always a part of the stress as well. So I wanted to just throw that in the span as well. Organizations should also have well-being policies. You cannot afford in 2023 with the current workforce not to be addressing well-being actively head-on. Otherwise, you stand at risk at being branded as a toxic organization on the various platforms that could be there. And that would be unfair when simply, you can always rebuttal with, these are the resources we've also made available. These are the policies we've made available to support the resources that are there. Right. So for employees, how can employees support each other? I would say, and I did see some comments here, somebody saying that sometimes that gossip can just be therapy. I do agree. However, I wouldn't call it therapy. I just say it's a good form of expression, because therapy is very different. I like what Wendy said when she said that she fired a lot of therapists. And that's something that I encourage people. You do need to find somebody who is the right fit for you. So fire as many as you need to until you find someone that you can resonate with on a day-to-day basis, and somebody who you feel you're growing and improving with, someone who outlines your goals. But therapy is so different from gossip. And this is what I would say. It's okay to want to have validation. It's okay to want to get support, to be comforted. That is natural. It's a human response. And so sometimes we can go to people for validation, for support. I always finish conversations that are not therapy. I always finish them with questions. And I ask, wow, I hear everything that you're feeling. I do agree, by the way, that might have been very harsh. However, what are you doing about it? I always end it with that. Because so long as we have expressed ourselves and then we have not left there with action points, tomorrow it will still be a pressing problem. And then over time, as employees as well, it's important for you to also, I don't want to say lead by example, but I will say lead by example. What does that mean? It means you actively setting boundaries. Anytime you have a problem that you have experienced in the workplace, show other people that you're also dealing with it. You're sorting it out. So you're having somebody mentioned that the real meetings start after the meeting. So you've had the official meeting, then now people now go into now the real meeting of the day to now debrief from what has happened in the original meeting. It's really important to also lead by example. That means that if I am offended, I then take it up. I don't just talk about it, I take it up. Because if I come to Wendy, I tell her about this situation, or Wendy has come to me and told me about this situation, then tomorrow I see her addressing it, it's going to have an impact on me. I will also not be sitting down with my problems. But if we together sit down with our problems and say, we are always our conversations are just and us, then it's not really going to have any impact on you. And finally, just what Angela had said, which is safeguard your own well-being. There's no job, that could be, more important than the way that you're doing. If you're constantly stressed out, safeguarding your well-being, sometimes leaving your job is hard because you might need the money. The economical times, it is you don't have a plan, your goals will go in a disarray. What can you do to actually take care of your mental health? And when it goes back to some of those things you're saying, take a leave day, check into a facility, if need be, amongst just all of these other avenues, utilize, find out from your HR what avenues are there. You've tried to report, nothing is happening. So just try as well to look into what could be there, the provisions that could be there, and see whether you're maximizing their use.
All righty then. Thank you very much, Stephanie, for putting it the way you have, which is something that is highly appreciated. I'll just request the audience to give us 5 minutes extra of their time to just have our panelists give us each 1 minute comment on just what it is they want to give you as a takeaway on this conversation before we are able to conclude. So we'll go with Agatha, then Angela, then Terry, then Stephanie.
Thank you, Wendy. I would say be undeniably good at what you do. it is, again, agency. You own 100% of your life. You will work with toxic people. You will work with people who are so deficient of their own agency that they want to suck in your energy. Be undeniable, and then be super focused. And on the point of super focus, there's Angela who had asked something about sexual harassment. I'll give you a non-HR answer. So what? Any woman who's risen to the top will tell you at some point it has been said they're sleeping with someone. I mean, if I counted the number of people I have slept with in other people's minds to rise to where I have, the experience I have, I could write a book. But people will talk. If you stop to throw stones at every dog that barks at you, you will not get to your destination. But that's a non-HR answer. HR need to safeguard workplaces. Be undeniable and grow. Earlier tips.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Agatha. Yes, Angela.
I love what Agatha has said. And just to follow up on that, I'd say also be very clear about yourself. I'll pick up on something that she said, that you cannot forget about introspecting. Just be self-aware, and then be very clear about what are your boundaries, what are you willing to accept, what are you not willing to accept. And when we talk about agency, it also means we have to be courageous. You cannot sit back and say, oh, this is happening, but I can't speak up. We must be courageous. You must be the one who is known for courage in the workplace. Be the one who reports to HR. Be the one who speaks up when it's not right. Be the one who pushes back and says, you know what, I do not agree with this. This is why I do not agree with it. And just know what is your value and know what is your worth in the workplace and work from there. And then you should be okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Angela, for that. Terry?
I'll just pick up on what Angela has said and add, really be authentic in the workplace. What is that ideal environment you want to see? Be the person to bring or create that environment. Many times we are blaming somebody else, but ask yourself, what can I do in this situation? How can I change the narrative? If the culture is toxic, how can I change that? What difference can I make as an individual? So be the person that makes the difference. Be the one that is courageous enough to say when things are not right and putting them right and doing what is aligned to your values as an individual. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you very much, Cherry. Stephanie?
Yeah, I'll just say that you have influence. Okay, so sometimes it might, a toxic workplace might make you feel like you're powerless and that there's nothing that you can do about it. You have influence, you have the ability to bring a change, you have the ability to make a change, even though it might appear like it's something that is very much out of your reach. You have the influence, you're able to make a change. And keep self-introspecting, because self-introspection will lead to your own professional development and personal development as well.
All righty. Thank you very much to our panelists for giving us quite an interesting array of information and for sharing their personal experiences. As usual, my audience, you've been very fantastic. I see there's a lot of chat that has gone on in the chat box, and I'm really sorry for any question that we haven't been able to reach, to be able to respond to. You can always write to us info@conversationswithwandy.org, and we'll be able to get back to you on that one. We shall be having this webinar live on our YouTube immediately after, on our YouTube immediately after this conversation, and we shall share with you guys the link so that you can be able to continue to watch it at your own time. We also call upon you to like and follow us on our socials. That's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Conversations with Wandy. As usual, you have been amazing, our panelists. Thank you very much, and see you next month, same time, same place for yet another conversation. Thank you, and do have a very lovely day ahead. And goodbye.